Hey everyone, Genome Gaming here, coming at you the next Marvel Strike Force video. Still haven't worked through my complete video issues. Don't even get me started on OBS. I don't know what's going on, but whatever. Troubleshooting aside, let's go ahead and get some info out there. So, I've been hearing some stuff in chat, basically in the Alliance a little bit, about people opening up new characters, of course, and a few of them were mentioned, and I kind of wanted to go over them real fast. So, alright, so first guy we're going to be taking a look at here is Thor. Now, Thor is an interesting character because he is both really good and really bad. And let's explain that just a little bit. Okay, so I unlocked Thor because they had, I think, daily rewards, login kind of thing. So, but normally I wouldn't be going for him this early, even though he is integral. So let's talk about the most important thing about Thor, is he basically unlocks at least 2 legendaries. If you want to get down technical, maybe even more. But, I mean, really, he's the direct unlock for Black Bolt, and Black Bolt will almost assuredly be your 5th Inhuman to unlock Ebony Maw. So he is vital for that. So that alone makes him worth getting at some point. But since Black Bolt and Ebony Maw are a little bit later game farms, okay, much later game farms, typically, Thor is usually a character you can skip out on early. But it's never too early to start collecting him reasonably. Remember, this is all free to play, and we're concentrating on other teams. Mileage may vary depending on, like I said, things like mega orbs. Like myself, I opened up 100 shards of Zemo. So, I mean, you can get really lucky. I opened up Hela at 50 shards, whatever. So, but I won't be able to work on her for quite a while. So, I mean, you'll see them trickle in and, like, the 5 character shards for cores offer and all that, but it's not enough to really get you to where you need to be to unlock, like, of course, starting with Black Bolt. But anyway, so that's really the most important facet of Thor. But let's talk about his pluses outside of that. So Thor is the glue that holds together basically 2 teams. He is indispensable on Asgardians, and he is close to indispensable on a well-functioning Avengers team. And it all has to do with his passive. His passive is everything with this character. When you get to the max, it's just ridiculous, man. This thing will be going off a lot. If it goes off usually about 2 times a match, usually the match is yours. Unless something really wacky happens. And this also works against the computer, too, because the computer's even dumber. So basically what happens is every time a character attacks either an Asgardian or a Wave 1 Avenger teammate, Thor builds a charge. Once he hits 5 charges, he lets off this attack. And it's completely free, doesn't cost you anything, you don't lose tournament or anything like that. It's big damage, alright? It's just bread and butter, that's what he's good at and what he's good for. So his other stuff is just decent at best, like his special and basic are nothing to write home about at all. His damage is not incredibly high, as you would expect it to be. Lightning Storm can be really good at higher levels because of the chance to stun. It's a really nice AoE with a chance to stun multiple characters. That's strong. And you can pick the character you want to assuredly stun. So, but all that alone won't make him by himself. So, for those same things that I said make him great on those other 2 teams, he loses that on the teams that are not Wave 1 Avengers or Asgardians. So that passive loses almost every bit of its utility, right? Now, you can stick him on teams with like 1 Avenger or 1 Asgardian, and it still works, but the chances are that either computer and especially human players will not just target the Asgardian one so he can build up charges. So he is a strange character in the fact that he is incredibly strong on 2 teams and basically worthless outside of that. So what I'm kind of trying to get at is Thor is kind of a popular character because of the movies and all that, and the way the game makes him out like he'd be strong. And if you face him like against the computer, he can be really strong and annoying, especially the souped up version. But really, without his teams, I would not invest in this guy. And right now, you see him sitting where he is. He probably won't get invested in much more as far as me trying to clear content, starting out. This is a new account. It's like not even 4 weeks old yet or whatever. So I just want to warn people out there, don't buy the hype sometimes. This guy is not going to get you very far at the end of the day. So that was just a warning there, and we'll go ahead and go into some more characters right now. Alright, the next character I want to talk about is going to sound like an odd thing, because this character is basically a top 10 character in the game right now, right? And that's Carnage. Now, once again, Carnage is popularly released in the comic books. Hasn't been released as a movie character yet, but he's well known in the community, and a lot of lists will list him very high on the echelon of tunes you can use, and he is. But much like Thor, he's very dependent on his team. So if you don't have at least 2 or 3 other symbiotes that are decently leveled, Carnage isn't going to do a whole lot for you, and you'd be better served putting your resources elsewhere. As a standalone character, he's honestly not very good. His damage output is not as high as you would think it is, and without him healing up an entire team around him, he won't be able to sustain for long, right? Because he is pretty fragile outside of his self-heal, right? And so when he doesn't have players like Venom giving him defense up and Anti-Venom giving him heals to keep him going, and most especially symbiote Spider-Man, it's just he has a real difficult time competing, and most characters can take him one-on-one. It's not usually an issue too bad. So outside of his ultimate at the very beginning, which looks pretty nasty, but it's pretty survivable most of the time, and the bleeds are annoying, he doesn't have a ton going for him as a solo character. Now, once you pick up at least 2 other symbiotes, usually Venom and hopefully symbiote Spider-Man in that order, because usually symbiote Spider-Man is pretty hard to get. Scream, of course, will come, but then that changes things because you can start mixing and matching in teams. And when he has 2 other symbiotes to go with him, then that's when he starts turning into a monster. But I just want to warn those out there who see him in like these top 10 lists and all that, that as a standalone character, he's just not all that great. And please excuse Discord apparently is going off right now. But and also, sorry, they don't have these characters open. On my main account, I have all these guys open, right? But so that's another almost trap character I wanted to warn you about. Okay, so next character is probably going to get some flack in the community, possibly, but here's another one I want to warn you about, and that's Mr. Sinister. All right, Mr. Sinister is almost like Thor in a way, but even maybe a little more polarizing, in that he's an incredibly strong character with a caveat. He requires gear and levels almost like no other character in this game, and it all has to do with his clone, because the clone mimics both his ability level and his stats. So you really cannot be having him at weak levels and expect much out of him. Now, unlike Thor, he's actually pretty useful outside of his team, but he gets exceptionally strong on his team, on the Marauders. But without that, and if you have him, say, around even gear 10 or so, gear 9, gear 10s, when he starts coming alive a little bit, but the clone that you summon is going to be really weak. It's not going to be as helpful as one might think it is, so it'll probably get one shot or even AoE down fairly quickly. And outside of that, he doesn't offer a whole lot, especially off of his team. His special is really good with Mystique, of course, but if you're using him as just a standalone character, it's not as great. So if you somehow get lucky and unlock this guy without having used war credits forever, just beware. Until you can really start building him up, he's not a juggernaut in this game, right? And even then, he's good. He's really, really, really good. But he works so much better in a team environment. Like, if you get stuck, like, at the end of a match, one-on-one with almost any other decently firepowered character, he's not going to make it. Especially if his clone's already dead. So, and he's got really long cooldown on his best ability, his ultimate. So, just want to warn you there. So, if you get lucky with, like, 100 shard unlock or something like that, you might be tempted to go nuts on this guy at the expense of maybe someone a little more versatile. And I think that could really, like, hurt you down the road. Now, don't get me wrong, I got this guy gear tier 14. I got him almost at 7 yellow gold stars. I got him at 4 reds. Unfortunately, I need a lot more red stars on my main account, and I like using him, even though I don't use him too much in arena like I used to. But let me tell you something else too, is at 6 gold and 4 red, he's only around 70k power, 75k, somewhere around there, with gear tier 14. So it's a lot of investment, a lot of money, and he's not all that strong at that level. You need him like in the 90 to 100k level so his clone can really do some work and not die too easily for him to be the monster that he can truly be. So basically, it's just mostly a warning. For those who get lucky or who are actually grinding war credits for him pretty early, is just be careful of this guy because he takes a ton of investment, a lot more than most characters do, to become really effective. Okay, the next character I want to talk about is a character that used to be a top damage dealer in this game and has basically fallen completely off the map, and that's RACCOON. Rocket is integral, of course, to getting Star-Lord, and as a standalone damage dealer, he isn't half bad. All right, so don't get me wrong thinking that, or people thinking that I'm saying he's bad. He's not necessarily bad, but he's just not that useful. I have him at Gear Tier 13 on my main account once again. I ran him a lot in DD2, but I didn't have a lot of characters that could do well. And back then, he was one of my higher damaging characters, right? So, you know, people are like, well, Genome, I mean, Rocket's really good. A lot of the stuff says he is. He can do some damage, but he doesn't bring a whole lot more outside of a Guardians and or slight tech team, right? He has a little bit of synergy with tech because of his passive, but believe me, you'll see if you bring him to U7, he has a really hard time killing anything. And it used to be you could put him on BKT or at least in Guardians with just Star-Lord, just keep feeding him, someone feeding him energy constantly, so he's ulting every turn. That's good. That's a good thing. But really, there's characters that are so much better damage than Rocket is nowadays that it's really, I find it a hard time like recommending to people that they put much gear into him and much time, unless you're really planning going hard on a Guardians team. I really wouldn't sweat it too much, honestly, because he falls off like a rock, man, around U7. It's a shame because he's a cool character, and I kind of like his kit. Usually you're opening up with a special and it does pretty decent single target damage, but like for instance, when you're facing Drax in U7. And like I said, my Rocket Raccoon is like tier 13, right? So he's decently geared. I think he's around 68k, 70k power, somewhere around there. Like his special on a fresh Drax won't even take a quarter of his health. At most, it'd be like a quarter, right? So that's not enough damage for a prime damage dealer. So what I'm saying is, most other damage dealers will take, or a lot of other damage dealers will take his slot, depending on your team makeup. So I really wouldn't worry about him too much, other than unlocking him for Star-Lord. So there to get sorry out there, Rocket fans, but yeah, I can't in good conscience say to build this guy up too much if you have better options. All right, here we are at the mighty Kingpin. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Back when I first started playing this game, if you would watch like ranking lists and all that, Kingpin was usually like almost god tier. He was up at the top, right? I don't know where all that came from, but I guess choices were rather limited back then. But still, Kingpin is useless. He is bloody useless. Now, one good thing about him is he's a good plug-and-play character somewhat. And you can stick him all out, especially villain teams. But really, usually he's the weakest link. He is good for his ultimate and nothing else. Yeah, I don't know what to say. And a lot of other characters can do his ultimate now, or similar things, right? But yeah, that's what makes him, is his ultimate. The problem is, after he goes the first time, it's going to be ages before he goes again. He's like the slowest character in this game. Oh man, is he slow. Let's see what his base speed is. Yeah, 75. It's awful. I think maybe Hulk is maybe slower, but Hulk has all kinds of turn meter manipulation going on in his kit. So Kingpin, I will stick him sometimes, maybe as a 5th in like the Symbiotes team, or as like a 5th Marauder, because he can help them out a little bit. Basically, the key to Kingpin is to let everyone else survive. He's almost like a pseudo tank, he has no tanking abilities, and his special does call in some really useless summons, but. So Kingpin, be careful of this guy. He even has his own orb, and he's just bad. He's just so slow. And once you use these two things, he is completely useless. He does no damage. His passive doesn't give a great amount of extra damage either with assists and all that. This should be like 100% assists. Then he'd be really useful, right? But he's not. He's just not got. He needs a rework really bad. And just a warning, just beware of Kingpin. Gear him a little bit if necessary, but don't sweat it too much. Okay, next up is one of the coolest characters in the game, But you know what? His uses are kind of limited somewhat. Yeah, I'm talking about none other than Ghost Rider here. Ghost Rider has one of my favorite kits in the game because it makes you play very differently, right? You got two options when you're facing an enemy Ghost Rider with other characters, right? You either just start plugging away at the other ones. In doing so, you're going to take a ton of retaliatory damage from him, right? Or you can try zerging him down, and when he dies, he gives a bunch of energy out and defense up and all that. Usually the latter is a better idea, but a lot of times it's just not that easy because he's very tanky. Like, he can take some hits, right? So it takes a while to get through him. And meanwhile, everyone else is beating you up. So a lot of times he'll be around teams, especially with the computer, with a lot weaker characters, right? And so it's just, sometimes it's actually better to just kill those other characters and take the damage from him. So it's a real chess match when you're playing against Ghost Rider teams, right? The problem is, outside of Supernatural, he's just a good character. So once again, if you get unlucky and unlock him or somehow unlock his node very early, and you want to dump a lot of resources in him, I would wait. Mine is 6 red, 7 gold. He's around 100k power. I got him at gear tier 13 or 14, I can't remember which it is. But I'll be honest with you, I don't use him very much. He's one of my highest characters, and I just don't use him like I thought I would, because his single target damage is not that great if his other members of the team aren't dying, because he's got a fairly long cooldown on Penance Stare, right? This thing does a ton of damage, especially when it's maxed like mine is, right? On my other account, of course. But it comes around kind of slow unless other characters are dying. So other than that, I mean, Hell Cycle is a good opener, but really it doesn't really, it's nothing too amazing, right? And his basic is just a basic with a bleed. So he is a strange character, and especially if you look at his tags and all that, and what he does. You know, he is a brawler, but his damage isn't top tier except for his ultimate. Now, if he's on a team where stuff is dying, his teammates are dying, which is usually not good for you, he is just cranking out the Penance Stares and healing himself and doing tons of damage. But be wary of this guy, because it pains me, because I love this character, and I like the character in the comic books too, but I just don't think he's that great in the game outside of the Supernatural team. Now, on Supernatural team, he's one of like 3 pieces of the glue. That's a very cohesive team, by the way. I'll talk about them at some other point. But so just once again, be careful. Ghost Rider is not going to be like the raid killing machine, and he's not going to be the arena killing machine, and outside of his team in war, he's not going to be even a war killing machine. He's definitely a character you'll have to build a team around to get the most out of him, right? So there's Ghost Rider. I love you, Danny Ketch, but or Johnny Blaze originally. But yeah, he's just not that useful, I find. All right, next character that I don't recommend you work on at all is Namor. Namor has one use, and he is a war monster, right? He's really good as war, especially with the Fantastic Four, right? Unfortunately, outside of war, he is garbage. Just about any character is better than him. His damage is mediocre at best. Some of the stuff doesn't even work outside of war. Like, if you look at Giganto, right, his ultimate, which is amazing in war. It clears, like, basically every positive effect on the enemy team, does decent damage, it comes out fast like Tur 1. But look what it does on outside of war here. 100% damage, attack all. It's nothing. It's like a Quake ultimate at best, right? So, yeah, it's another shame, because I do like Namor the character in the comic books, but he's just not very good. Outside of war, he's useless. I mean, I leave him on like the Fantastic Four for Blitz, but I mean, everything works in Blitz, right? So just a warning, once again, if Lucky Shard pulls or somehow you farmed him for some reason, which I wouldn't recommend, a lot more important characters to do, Namor is just, you're almost better off like a hand character. Honestly, he's just not very good outside of war at all. So buyer beware. All right, next up we have the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, I got really lucky, I think, with Red Pull with him. I got Red Star. I either got 5 or 6 Red Stars on him on my main account, right? And I got him at 7 gold. Of course, I maxed him. I like the Supernatural team a lot, even though it's not as good as it used to be. And he is definitely an integral part of it. But outside of that, I don't recommend Doctor Strange at all. First off, he is one of the most fragile characters in this game. He dies with like 2 or 3 hits of just about any character. He's super low HP, no defense. it's just bad, right? Now, on supernatural teams, and really, I mean, he with the right investment, he can keep adding a little more survivability to him, but really, he just works much better in supernatural team because he'll be getting bonus deflects and all that from the enemy when they get positive effects, and he'll stack these up to like 8. So that makes him a lot more survivable, right? But without that, he just dies so easily. He does no damage. He has really good abilities, except for his heal sucks. His heal is super... It takes like 4 turns to get to it. It heals for almost nothing. But it is saved by the fact that it reses a character. That part of it is good. But really, he'll never survive that long outside of a supernatural team. Ever, ever, ever. He's just going to die. Even AoE stuff's going to kill him. So unless you got someone else direct healing him, he's not going to make it. So, short cooldown on his passive, but just don't... If you take him into rages like for 1 node or something like that, and usually he doesn't make it through there. It doesn't matter who's healing, right? So Doctor Strange looks like a cool character with a cool kit, but really he's just not that good. I mostly unlocked him... Well, I had him unlocked, but I mostly worked on him because I wanted to build a supernatural team. I had a Ghost Rider going, and Doctor Strange is definitely necessary for that team, but just not that great outside of it. And that really gets back to another character that bookends that really well, and that's Mordo. Same thing. Even though Mordo has a little more utility than Doctor Strange does outside of supernatural team. In fact, I had him in DD2 for a while. He's actually fairly good in the very last node, believe it or not, just for some of the initial stuff. But usually he doesn't live very long either. He's super fragile, just like Doctor Strange is. He has no defensive tools really whatsoever, other than a self-heal when other characters die. And it's pretty small, and it won't keep him going. If he gets any kind of focus attack on him, he's going to crumble, right? His decent kit against the computer, it's not nearly as good, though. Like, when you're facing this guy, he's like a prime target in raids, because he has the most annoying kit versus you. But, like, versus the computer, it doesn't do anything. Like, his damage is non-existent. His AoE does no damage. The heal block is nice, but it's got a short cooldown, but just not very good. His best ability is probably his special. And his basic doesn't do anything, really. So, you might be tempted to thinking he's really good because he's a member of a good team, but you get him outside that team, and he's just not very good at all. All right, and last and certainly least is Bullseye. Bullseye is awful. He did get a rework a little while ago to kind of line up with Taskmaster, and putting him on a war defense team is not horrible, but he's cut usually from even those lists, like the Merc teams. They'll just put like Killmonger and maybe another mercenary minion or something on there. He's that bad. Bullseye could be decent, but he's got 2 problems, right? For one thing, he doesn't bring really anything else to the team, at least outside of war, right? So he's completely self-contained, and he's just a straight damage dealer, and it's not AoE damage, he's a single target damage dealer. And the problem, once again, with that is he doesn't do very much damage. Like, his damage is pitifully weak. Couple that with his fragility, he's almost as squishy as Doctor Strange or Mordo, right? He's as squishy as the clothies, as it will, if you want to use a wowism there. It's awful. And to add insult to injury, his ultimate, which is actually decent damage, right? It takes like 4 rounds to get to it. He will never survive 4 rounds anywhere. You'll never see this go off. Especially in higher level content, right? He will not survive. AoE's knocked this guy's health down like crazy, and it just takes too long. They needed to rework him to where he could do his ultimate either opening or within 2 turns, because that's the only reason you would want him. And his special sucks. He just needs a big damage boost. He needs an overall stat boost to be decent even, but he's never going to get it again, I don't think. He's a free character, so they don't want to give you easy access to good characters that are free usually. But Bullseye. So he looks cool, and he was semi-popular in the comic books, at least back in the 80s and 90s. And one might think that he would be a prime damage dealer when you start gearing him, but he never gets it. He never gets strong enough to compete with the big boys. And I advise you, even when you have very limited options, like my account does right here, don't work on him anyway, because every bit of gear that you drop into him is just a waste for later on. It's seriously, work on some of the merc minions before him. Like, let's see, let's do it real quick before we get out of here. Alright, so Merc Riot Guard's good. Also good on the war defense. Merc Lieutenant is good. Even most of those guys are great on war defense, right, with Taskmaster. Korath, I don't like him either. He's better than Bullseye, though. There's no doubt about that, but Korath there. Merc Soldier, now he is worse than Bullseye, just straight speaking, but Merc Sniper, I'd rather have Merc Sniper than Bullseye. He hits a lot harder than Bullseye. His cooldowns are shorter. And Killmonger blows away Bullseye. That's no problem. I'm not going to include Taskmaster. He's basically a legendary for Mercs, but so he's definitely the worst mercenary by far. And don't let the fact that he's not a minion fool you. He's no better than the minions, and in some cases, objectively worse. So anyway, that's my list of people or characters I think you should either be careful of or avoid altogether, especially beginning out, because they're not going to help you progress in this game that well. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'd like to hear your feedback, and until next time, this is Genome Gaming, out.